Okay, looks like we are live. Let me go close the door real quick. Okay, all right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Thursday. It is December 4th, which could mean one thing. The beginning of the month, we all know, is our intro to cameras, or camera basics. For those of you who are new to this, have just started my classes, or, talked to one of myself or one of my colleagues here at Apt Electronics, my name is Saxon. I teach the camera classes each Thursday from 5:30 to 7. Reminder, this is the first Thursday of the month, so it's the intro class. Next Thursday will be intermediate. The following Thursday will be the advanced. And then I believe the fourth Thursday of this month is actually Christmas. So as we get closer, we'll discuss more about that. But let's get you started on camera basics. Anybody watching at home, feel free to chat in if you have questions or comments or concerns. Anybody in person, feel free to interrupt at any point in time. So camera basics, what are we talking about here? Camera basics is really meant for people to get off the ground with photography. It's not necessarily meant for you to learn how to master your camera in one day. That's impossible. No one can do that. But really what this class is geared in for is for those who want to get into it. It's for teaching people how to get off of a cell phone and how to use a real camera and how to feel confident with it when you first buy it. That being said, a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be the automatic setting on your camera. It's going to be the easiest way to get in with your photography without overburdening yourself with the setup on how to shoot and how to set the camera and etc. Where to go when all else fails? I like to remind everybody that as a photographer, as someone who's getting into photography, you are going to have a whole helping of options to get resources and assistance when you're shooting and when you're learning. I always tell people, start by reading your owner's manual. Learn your camera inside and out. Know what the buttons do, know where everything's at, and most importantly, know where to go when you have no other options, when all else fails. Imaging resource is something that I got my customers onto more recently. It's something I found years ago that I really liked, but Imaging Resource is a kind of a blog style website where people will post camera questions that they have or look at camera postings that people will have and either answer questions or get their questions answered. They also have a podcast as well too, which I highly recommend if you're someone who enjoys camera-oriented things and information. Canon, Nikon, and Sony all have their own website dedicated to camera resources. Fantastic information that's out there. Nikon is one of my personal favorite websites. Definitely worth checking out. Brands like Leica also have their academia. There's so many resources out there when it comes to cameras. And then all else fails, the final option. YouTube is my personal favorite option. And people ask me why that is that if you can't find something on YouTube and learn how to do it, then you're either not looking it up right or there is no way to do it. People have done everything on YouTube. I recently just replumbed or redid my bathroom all through the guidance and help of YouTube. It's a great resource. People will walk you through. You can find a 10-minute video. You can find a 2-hour-long video on whatever your camera is and specifics that you might have questions on about that unit. Now, in today's class, you're going to hear me use some terminology over and over again, so I might as well break the mold on that. Here we have the 3 most popular or typical styles of camera you might see on the market today. The DSLR, the digital single lens reflex, which is the older technology. It is the next step from film photography as you move into the world of photography. But DSLR was short-lived, probably about 20, almost 30 years, until mirrorless came out. Mirrorless is the technology that you'll see most cameras are using today. It is a very similar technology to DSLR, but the name says it all. There is no mirror. And there's a bunch of improvements on mirrorless, which I'll talk about on the next slide or a few slides later. And then finally, the point and shoot / bridge camera. Mirrorless and point and shoot are basically similar or the same. There's one key difference. Point and shoots get their name because they're an all-in-one camera, meaning the lens does not come off, you don't change the lens. Mirrorless, you can. So the technology is the same on both of them, the way they work, they function. The biggest difference is that the lens can't come off on a point and shoot. Now, this is the debate, or this is the conversation that I think most people like to have with me, especially if you've been shooting for a long time and you're familiar with photography as a whole. DSLR or mirrorless, and what is the difference? Why do I care? DSLR is the older technology, and you can see in the top image kind of the diagram of how this works. Light comes into the camera, bounces off the mirror, pentaprism, and then through the viewfinder. When you're ready to take the picture, you pull the trigger, the mirror pops up, the shutter clicks, and then the image is burned into the sensor. This was the way that regular photography before a digital system worked. The only difference is that the shutter revealed the film, which would then burn the image onto the film. From there now, we've moved into a mirrorless system. So light comes in through the shutter. We are then getting the image onto the sensor as usual, and now you have an electric viewfinder. Now, mirrorless has come a long way, and it's definitely taken over DSLR's territory, and I like to tell people the reasons why mirrorless is a significant jump from DSLR bodies. These cameras have no mirror. They are lighter weight, they're smaller, and those pictures show off the kind of characteristics I like to tell customers about. They are better for low light situations. Their video has been increased. The stabilization on the camera is better. A lot of these cameras have Wi-Fi Bluetooth capabilities where you can transfer transfer your photos to your phone or computer via that. They support in-battery charging. They're lightweight. There's really not a lot of bad things I have about mirrorless. So if you're brand new to this and you're getting into it, you can definitely find DSLR cameras for a good deal. They're on sale. Used equipment is going to definitely be at a lower price point. But if you're brand new in the market, to future-proof yourself and to really get on the wave that photography and videography is going, I would heavily recommend a mirrorless camera if that's something that you're looking to buy. Now, before we get more into the anatomy of your camera, buttons, and then lenses to end the class, I want to talk a little bit about memory cards. Your photos are going to save to a memory card. In your camera, for most cameras I should say, there is no internal saving component. Most cameras don't give you come with any storage pre-built into it. They expect the user to purchase their storage, and the reason being is that people have preferences on the cards and on the storage pieces that they get. Some people are brand specific, other people are very concerned about speeds, other people care about the storage size, some people care about the read and write speed of the card. There's a whole lot of reasons why you might choose different cards. I might recommend talking to someone a little bit more personally about your camera and what cards they recommend. Or I might do some research and take a look and see what cards are best suited for you. There are cards that are better for video, cards that are better for photo, and there's a whole mix in between. But your photo is going to save to a SD card. Most cameras are going to use what's called SDXC. If you have a very old camera, there's a small chance it might only use SDHC, which is the older card. From there, though, I always recommend make sure you have two. These cards, over time, can get worn out and they become kind of fragile, and eventually they stop working altogether. They fault. That being said, it would be a shame for you to go on your vacation or that photo shoot you've been planning, get out there and then find out your card faulted, and now you have no way of saving the photos. So, heavy recommendation to always have 2 of these on you when you travel. Now, I like to also remind you your card shouldn't live on the memory card. The memory card is your transportation. I like to look at it as your car. If your home is point A and your work is point B, then you're using your car to get back to and from those locations. In the same sense of a memory card, the memory card is going to take photos from your camera and bring them to your computer. The photos then will get deleted from the memory card, and you'll continue to reuse the memory card over and over and over again. Hence why they can get damaged and worn out, because after a certain period of time, it's going to meet its expiration. If you're properly saving photos onto your computer, downloading everything reasonably, then you shouldn't have to worry about your photos living on the memory card. So this is the simple step-by-step that I like to tell customers to make sure that you ensure you don't lose your photos or damage your card. So let's start it simple by turning off the camera and waiting a few seconds, I say 5. This gives the camera a chance to power down and make sure that everything is done processing and saving so you don't disrupt that process. Afterwards, go ahead and remove the card and place that into a card reader. Now, I do recommend to try avoid using the camera to transfer photos to your device. And the only reason being is that it diminishes the photo quality slightly by doing that. It also can drain both the phone and the camera's battery life. So depending on where you're at, where you're shooting, what your time frame might look like, you might not necessarily want to lose that juice from your camera or from your phone. I recommend using a good card reader. You can find these anywhere. You don't necessarily have to worry, but get a card reader that's appropriate for you. As you can see on there, there's a bunch of different card readers with a bunch of different functions. Some of these card readers are made for the higher end cameras. Other ones, if let's say maybe your computer doesn't have a lot of charging or plug-in space, offer USB hubs on the side too. This gives you more access. So again, depending on what you need, these are good options that are available to you. Next thing we want to do is copy photos to a destination folder. And I say copy, don't move copy. And the reason I say that is because we want to make an exact duplicate of what we've already taken. Again, the idea is that we are preventing or doing everything in our power to prevent the loss of our photos and our videos. So by copying things, we're ensuring that they're still on the memory card. We're not moving them from one location, we're just duplicating them from the card to the computer. Now, when you make this destination folder, if you're having a hard time finding it, you can find it either through Mac or Windows by using the Explorer or the Finder icon. You can simply look up the folder and find out whatever photos you're looking for. With the destination folder, I do highly recommend, and I require it technically personally, that you label it something you'll remember. Now, if you're like me, after every photo event that I go to, I come home, I download the photos, and I delete everything on the card, just so that way I can keep reusing the card and I don't have a pile up of photos that are months or days old from events that I might not remember. Once I've downloaded them, I'm going to then go through and label the folder. So, for example, Thanksgiving just happened. I have all my photos from Thanksgiving, of the family, of friends. What I might do is label my folder Thanksgiving 2025. From there then, in the future, if I want to find Thanksgiving photos, but maybe I don't remember what year I took them, I could type in Thanksgiving, and hopefully every folder that has photos labeled Thanksgiving will pop up. I can then look through those and find what I'm looking for. But maybe I don't remember what it is I'm looking for. I just remember it happened in 2025. It's a holiday of sorts. Well, I could simply then use Windows or Mac to find 2025 folders, and this folder should then pop up. But you're future-proofing yourself, so you don't lose anything. You can easily access it later, and you have an idea of where it might be. The next thing I recommend is to copy the photos to a secondary location. I might recommend something like an external hard drive, Prime Photos, or Google Drive. Those are all great options or answers. Easy ways to store and save your photos, easy ways to go back and find the photos. But again, we're creating a backup just in case something were to go wrong with the main copy. Save it on the computer, but if our computer were to break or to die, at least we have that then saved somewhere else. Next, eject the card before physically removing it. After that, insert the card back into the camera and format the card in the camera. Formatting will erase all the old info on the card. You can also still delete them in the computer, but formatting does another very important thing, which is it formats the card for the camera you're using. It takes the camera that you have and makes sure it makes the card optimized for that. So the idea is that when you're taking photos, now that the card has been formatted for that camera, hopefully this means that you can get an additional 200, 300 photos on the card because it's optimized for your camera and the intake that your camera is taking. A lot of information, but let's go step by step, again using images to kind of break this down. Starts with your SD card. That is where your photos get saved to. Everything is directed towards that. From there, you have to get it onto the computer. You can either do that by transferring via the Bluetooth Wi-Fi service. You can also do that by taking the card out and plugging it into the computer. You can also do that by putting a cable into the camera and connecting that way. Once they're saved to the computer, we want to copy them to a secondary location, and I might recommend an external hard drive or a cloud-based service. Now again, cloud-based services, there's so many out there. Google Drive is a good one. If you're using Microsoft for work, OneDrive is theirs. And my personal favorite is the Adobe Creative Cloud, because if you pay for their monthly services, you also get the ability to have Photoshop, InDesign, Lightroom, all of the editing softwares that a photographer or a cinematographer might use. So let's go through a tour of the device, tour of your camera. I found a picture of a DSLR body that I labeled all the information on there for what exactly is on there. Now when we're going through this, I want to remind everybody that your camera might look a little bit different. Some of the buttons might be in different locations, some of the menus might look a little bit different, but these buttons exist on your camera and they are located on nearly every camera, minus a couple. If there's a button maybe you're a little bit more confused on, you might want more information, just chat that in and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But without further ado, let's start. So, this is a Nikon DSLR that we're looking at. I believe it's a D5100 or a D, let's see if I can see it on the side, D5, I think it's a D60, I can't tell. Either way, it's a DSLR, it's a crop sensor, and there's a few ways I can tell that, but just in general. When we look at the top here, to keep it simple, there is a red dot or a red circle somewhere on your camera. That is the video start and stop. Whenever you're in shooting mode, you can just press that button, it'll start recording video. Press it again, it'll stop the recording. Power switch. By turning the power switch on or off, you're able to turn the camera on or off. The shutter release, half squeeze on the shutter release will focus your camera. Full squeeze on the shutter release will then take the photo. Exposure compensation. When you're in a mode other than automatic, you'll have access to this feature. And really what this does is it takes the exposures, the darkness and the lightness of your entire composition and brings it down or brings it up. Now where this would be useful is if, let's say, you are in manual control, you've set all your settings, even ISO, and the photo still looks a little dark in the composition. What we can then do is take the exposure and raise or lower that to help compensate for the dark areas. Mode dial. I like to look at your mode dial as your gear shift of your car. To keep it simple, your gear shift puts you from park, neutral, reverse, drive, whatever it might be, and it gives you the ability to switch the car to and from. Very similar with the mode dial. The mode dial is there to give us the ability to switch between all the different settings, whether that might be manual, automatic, or so and so forth. Live view, this is a DSLR piece. It's not really on mirrorless cameras, but mirrorless, you have a button called display. By pressing live view or display, you're able to change the screen of your camera to give you an either more complicated or less complicated and cluttered look. If you just press on that button, it'll go through and show you the different displays so you can get an idea. And then lastly, the command dial. Mode dial sets your different modes of the camera. The command dial will then execute the mode that you're on. For example, if you're on the aperture priority mode, well then the command dial will control the aperture function. If you're on shutter priority, same idea. When you get the full manual, there's usually a secondary command dial somewhere on your camera. If there isn't, then usually you hold down one button, turn the command dial, it'll adjust one setting, hold another button down, turn the command dial, it adjusts another. Again, for clarity, for simplicity's sake, and just for general knowledge, stick with automatic. I see all too often people who get very excited, they buy their first camera, they don't necessarily know how to use it, but they immediately go into the manual or the more customized experience settings. And if they're not familiar with cameras, this can be a very frustrating process as you try to take photos. Things come out dark, they're too light, they aren't processed enough, they're over-processed, and so on and so forth. Starting with automatic as a beginner just gives you the confidence and the flexibility of holding the camera, getting used to using it, and then obviously shooting and being more comfortable shooting. So start with automatic. Remember though that your mode dial, even if you are just shooting with automatic, is going to look different as you look from brand to brand. Most are going to have the same features and things on there, but all are going to be slightly different. This is just 3 of the big brands, so Canon, Nikon, Sony. This is how their mode dial looks. Some brands don't even have a mode dial on there. You go into the actual menu settings of the camera and dictate all of these things. But again, they all look a little different. And while they all look different, they have different things on there, these 6 things are something you'll find on almost every camera. If not, you will find on every camera. You start with the auto or the A+. It might also be IA, it might just be a green camera symbol, but typically you see that, and that is auto control over settings and functions of camera. That's the one I recommend the most. From there we move to full manual. That's full manual control over the camera's array of functions. These 2 we're going to talk more in depth about next week. That's what the intermediate class is all about. But for short, A or AV is aperture priority control, and S or TV is shutter priority control. P is program auto. Aperture and shutter speeds are automatic, but everything else is changeable. This is usually the setting I tell people to go to after you feel comfortable with auto. And then B, which is slowly but surely falling off. They're not on cameras much anymore, but the setting is still available. If you're curious, I can always show you how on your camera. But B, camera is fully customizable, but as long as you're holding the shutter release, the camera will stay open. And that stands for bulb, and where that's really cool is for long exposure. People who've been taking pictures of the stars, or the aurora borealis, or if you take pictures of lights or light shows, you might do long exposure, so that way you get this really cool effect of light bleed and just kind of this really nice oversaturated image. Used to be a dial on the camera, and now it's more of a setting within your manual or your shutter priority control. Now, within automatic modes, on some older cameras, and even on some of the entry-level cameras, you're going to have what's called scene. Scene is great. It's not my personal favorite thing, but for beginners it's nice because scene is automatic. It's the same thing as what you're doing with automatic, but the flip side to it is that they're more personalized. What you see in the scenes mode are still automatic modes, but they're modes more guaranteed or geared towards certain functions. Could be a portrait mode, could be no flash, could be landscape, macro, sports photography, nighttime photography, anything that might be more specialized, but still qualify as something you might want to do in the automatic setting. Scenes is there for that. Now, I always like to pose the kind of devil's advocate that it really doesn't do much more than automatic. So why really use those? Just use automatic. But everyone's function's a little bit different. Everyone likes the more personalized experience and touch. So just remember that with those settings, they're not that far off from what automatic does. And it probably would be easier just to keep it in automatic. But again, give it a shot. If they're on your camera, play with it. Moving to the side. So we have the flash button. Should be an arrow with a squiggly lightning bolt going down. Press that and it'll engage the flash for you. FN can be a few different things. So FN, I, or Q. You'll see those three buttons kind of scattered throughout different cameras or models. FN is a function. And what function basically does is it gives you a shortcut into a menu system you might use a bunch. For example, if you're shooting and let's say that you focus parameters. Do you want wide, medium, small? What's the image quality? Target recognition, white balance, burst mode. It could be a whole bunch of different stuff. All of that could be available under the function button. And if it's not there, usually FN buttons can be customized in your camera's menu system. Go in, you can choose what you want the FN to be, so that way when you're shooting, not only do you have a more personalized touch on your camera, but you also have the ability to get to a menu system quicker and faster than before. From there we have a zoom ring. Pretty self-explanatory. If you're using a lens that has a telescoping lens, the zoom ring will zoom back and forth for you. There's the focus ring in the front. If you're not using automatic focus and you're using manual focus, you would use the focus ring on the front of the camera to help with then the focus. Lens retract button. Lenses that didn't necessarily or don't have an advanced motor on the inside might have a lens retract button. And a lens retract button is pretty simple. It is just a button that you click. It'll lock the lens into place so that it doesn't move during transit. And then when you're ready, you can simply unlock the lens by holding that button again and then turning it. But that's the idea behind that. Lens release button. So by holding this down and turning clockwise, the lens will pop off from the camera. You can then attach another lens. Typically there is mounting dots. You match those dots up dot to dot, turn the lens counterclockwise, and then you should hear it click into place as well. And then drive mode. Stack of squares and a little timer there. Basically that stands for your camera's ability to fire and at what rate it's firing. Are you taking a photo of, let's say, your kid's sports? Are they moving fast? You might want to turn burst photography on. And you can choose high or low burst. Maybe instead you're taking a photo and you need to be in the photo, or you just want to set a timer for 10 seconds. You can do that through drive mode as well too. Alright, so flipping it over to the other side. I just talked about that menu button a minute ago, but menu is exactly what you see there. Things like FN, your time and date, your Bluetooth Wi-Fi settings, personalized settings like the color of your camera, or maybe film type if you've got the ability to put filters on your camera, LUTs, double exposure control, bracketing, all these advanced features and setups that you might be interested in your camera are all available in the menu button. And that's where you can find everything. Diopter adjustment. If you're like myself and you wear glasses, you might need to readjust that. That's your ability for clear vision through the viewfinder. Excuse me. Info. Info is really cool because it usually tells you a little bit about what the photo you just took is. So to jump around a little bit, if you hit the image playback button, you use the multi-selector to scroll through a little bit, you can actually find a photo that you like, press the info button, and that will then break down the stats. It'll tell you what aperture it's shot at, aperture, what shutter speed, what ISO, what was the exposure compensation. If your camera's smart enough, it might even geolocate you, give you a time and a date for when you took the photo, and it even gives you the ability to see a histogram, which will show you the distribution of light throughout your photo. All that being said, it's a great tool, info, for a new beginner photographer who's trying to learn a little bit about their mistakes and then their achievements. Focus or exposure lock. So pressing that button will help you lock in on the focus. If you're someone who's been shooting before, that half click on the trigger is one way to do it. But some people don't like that, so they'll press the button on the top to do back focus. Image playback we just talked about. There's that I button. I talked about FNQ. They're all very, very similar. Again, I is the same thing as all those. Jumping down a little bit, we have the magnify, demagnify. If you're someone like me and you want to see the crispness of your photo, how good the edges might be, to check for blurriness or for movement, you can use the demagnifier and magnifier to zoom in on your photos and get a little bit more information on that. And then finally, the delete button. There's a trash can button on your camera. Press that, it'll delete the photo. I do like to tell customers this because I find it a fun fact. Deleting a photo takes more battery than taking a photo. So my recommendation for all you photographers, don't delete the photos on your camera. Just take the photos, take as many as you can. When you get home and you have them bigger, blown up on your computer screen where you can sit and look through them, then make your decisions, delete the ones you don't like, so on and so forth. This is one of my favorites. A customer sent this to me a very long time ago. They were furious with me. They thought I sold them a bad camera. And this is where I created an analogy that I like to use a lot, where it's not necessarily the baseball bat, it's the baseball player. Just because you bought some equipment and it's not working the way you expected it to work doesn't mean that the product's at fault. It just might mean that you don't know how to use it. And this is where I learned that the customer was shooting in full manual. She didn't know that she had to be in an automatic setting, and she didn't really know how to do any of that. We talked it all through. I showed her some demonstrations on her camera, and within 15 minutes we were able to figure out that it was a quote-unquote her problem, not the camera problem. Give it time, people. Your camera will take time to learn. It's practice, it's being comfortable, but it's also just going out and taking photos. You can't pick up a camera in one day and expect to be the best at photography. It takes time, practice, and dedication. With that being said, your camera isn't a smartphone. The phone companies, Apple, Samsung, Google, have made it so easy to take pictures. And they did that on purpose because their cameras, their phones, all have beautiful cameras on there. The ease for you to take photos with a phone is incredible. However, you didn't buy a camera or get a camera to have the same experience as your phone. Most people that are used to shooting on a phone and upgrade into a camera did so because they realized that the quality or the experience wasn't enough for them. They wanted something better. So they upgraded into a camera. Your camera can do everything the phone can do. The phone just organizes it in such a way where it makes it easy and accessible at your fingertips. Through patience and learning your product, you can easily do all the same things your phone does with its camera on your regular camera. This to me is simple, but I like to remind people of it. Posture and hand placement go a long way within photography, mainly not for the photo's quality's sake, but for your sake. Your back and your hands can get sore. Try to shoot with a straight back, like picking up a box. Bend with your knees, not with your back. Preserve yourself so that way the longevity, you can take pictures like this and you don't become over bombarded with the gear and the equipment that you have. When you're using your camera and shooting, keep one hand firmly planted on the lens, one hand firmly planted on the body. Now, depending on the camera that you have, this is my journalist camera that I carry with me everywhere I go. I don't really have that big of a lens that I need to worry, so I just keep my hand at the base of the camera. This works too, but depending on the lens that you have, you might need to keep your hand on the lens and the side of the camera or on the bottom. So when I shoot, I typically shoot like this. Focus, then shoot, and shoot through the picture. Remember that you're not photographing, you might be photographing just one thing if that's how you set things up. But typically there's lots of parts or moving pieces in a photo. Remember that the photo keeps going until you pull the trigger and until that image is on the other side. So focus, shoot, and shoot through the entirety of the photo. Remember that all parts and pieces are in there. You can review and take a look at things, but unless you're cropping, editing, or doing stuff, what you get through the photo is what you're going to get. So take the time, breathe, and shoot appropriately. If you or the camera are moving, you're going to get blurry photos. There are a lot of cool artists out there who have made millions and millions of dollars selling blurry photos. Today is the day I tell everybody that you are not that artist. Neither am I, unfortunately, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here. But because of that, we want to get good quality photos. We want to make sure we're not getting blurry photos. This is your first time seeing the Eiffel Tower. It may be your last time seeing the Eiffel Tower. You want a good photo to have the memory. So don't move when you're taking photos, otherwise you will get blurry photos. Now, this is one of the most important parts of photography if you are someone using a mirrorless or a DSLR body. If you're someone who's using a point and shoot or a bridge camera, this most likely will not apply to you. So don't necessarily worry too much about this. You even can stop if you don't need to listen to it anymore. But date your body, marry your glass. Your camera body eventually will get old. It will eventually become outdated. You know, these mirrorless systems are the newest ones. We don't have 10 years or 11 years worth of practice on them yet to really have this information. But in the world of DSLRs, 10 years is usually what I tell people. You get a good amount of photos. If you're lucky, 10 years. From there, you're going to start to notice the camera slows down, light leak, it's not responding, the autofocus isn't good. And what I tell customers all the time is you're just going to notice the image quality is significantly lesser. That's when it's time to upgrade. If you did this properly in your world of cameras, you upgraded the lenses, you married the glass, you bought the better glass of the camera, so that way eventually when you upgraded, you had this beautiful lens that you could bring to a brand new camera body that you're ready now for. If I had any recommendation, always spend more of your money in the glass and less in the body, at least to start. You won't regret having good glass. One of the things to understand is that focal length and zoom are basically the equivalent to each other. Now, engineers and scientists and people who are much smarter than I made these up, and they go by millimeter lengths. Now, in the world of photography, to a photographer, we know these lengths and we understand how they work. That is, through the size, we're able to then see the distance between us and the object, bringing it closer or keeping it further away. Currently, right now, I'm shooting with a 28mm lens on my camera. When we look at this, though, we can see the difference between 70, 105, 200, and 400. 70 being wide and full encompassing, 400 being narrow and tight. Keep in mind with this that not only do focal length and zoom equivalent are identical in a lot of different ways, but that by zooming, we're bringing everything closer. So remember that it's not just the birds that are getting closer to us, it's everything. You look from 70 to 400 and you can see how much of the water is gone, how much of that blue sky is not there anymore. The mountains that you could see in the distance there are now up close and personal. You can even see some details on the mountains at 400, where at 70, you could barely tell that they were there. That being said, though, you got to be careful when zooming, because focal length or your zoom can lead to compression or distortion. When you're shooting with these lenses that have high or low numbers to an extreme point, like let's say the 28 millimeter or 16 millimeter, or maybe something closer to 600 or 400, you're getting compression, or you're getting this kind of, not augmented reality, but you're getting like a false kind of reality in a lot of the photos. There's just something about it that isn't showing properly, and that has to do with the compression. When we're using something like a 16-24 and we're taking portraits, we're going to get a more narrow needle effect, especially in portraits. When we're taking things with a larger lens at a certain distance for portraits, we're going to fatten up and widen the face. Typically, lenses exist in a category or scale of, what do you need for when you need it. Typically, when you hear anything that's below a 35 millimeter lens, so 16, 12, 10 millimeters, 16 to 35, we would consider those wide angle lenses. Those lenses might not be the best for portrait photography. 35 is pretty good. But really what those lenses are geared for is the wide angle picture. Landscape, architecture, nature, bigger things that you need to get with our lens in one whole shot. That's what those small numbers are for. Once you get to 35 to about 85, you're looking at portrait lenses. Lenses that are perfect for people, perfect for good short encounters, not big distance. I like to shoot with my 28 because it's a nice in-between of wide angle to portrait, and I like the way the compression on my lens looks, so therefore it benefits me when I'm using this. Flip that around though, when you get to the larger numbers, you're using that for distance. 100 to 400 isn't really the best for architecture. But now if there is, let's say, a giant building 700 feet away from you, that 600 might be a great lens to get that one building that's at such a far distance. Let's say you're out in nature, there's birds flying, you're going to need something with zoom to get close up on the animal. So the larger numbers, while they can still compress and kind of make things look bigger, or distort, I should say, they're fantastic for when you need that range, the push to get something in the distance. So remember, knowing your focal length, understanding how compression and distortion can come into it, and then picking a lens that's appropriate for the job you're trying to get done, go a long way. Here's a list, or my list, of common lenses. Now we can get crazy. There are AI augmented lenses nowadays. Fisheye lenses are really popular. But I want to talk about the common lenses. There's common terms you're going to hear within the photography world on lenses specifically, and I think it's important that you kind of understand and get a grasp on that. Start with a kit lens. In the world of photography, you're going to hear about what camera you might be buying as a kit or as a body only. Typically, camera manufacturers make kits to give customers an entry level into the camera world without needing to spend an exuberant amount of money. These kit lenses are often very weak, and they're not usually the best for high end, if you will. So for example, this lens here is a great intro lens. 18 to 55 millimeters, gives you wide angle, gives you portrait. In the top right corner, it says 3.5 to 5.6. This refers to its aperture. The lower the number, the better the lens is for background blur and for focusing. This lens states that at 18 millimeters, it'll be at 3.5, and as I zoom, it'll change to 5.6, so it's now 3.5 continuous. This will make more sense next week when we talk about aperture and what that really means for the camera. But this one has a weaker aperture, meaning that the lens necessarily isn't going to be the best for professional work. But for someone who's getting into photography, who just wants to take photos or video, this would be a great entry-level piece to get started. It's a kit. Now, some people don't want zoom. They don't need it. They want more of a professional quality lens, something that lets in a lot of light and has more of a professional, again, quality. Nifty 50s or primes are typically what you'll see in that regard. Prime lenses only have one singular number prime lens. Nifty 50 is because the 50 millimeter is the closest to the human eye, and that equivalent. So the 50 millimeter is usually considered one of the better lenses. On the top of the lens, on the left-hand side, if you're looking at it, you should see 1.4 on there. This is the aperture. This is the same thing we just saw a minute ago, and that stands for the 1.4 aperture, meaning that it's a lower aperture, which means it lets in a lot of light. So a lens like this can be more expensive, but this will take a very good portrait with a nice blurred out background. Now, a prime lens might not be enough because you do need zoom, but you don't want something cheap like a kit lens. You need something better. Well, then you move into telephoto lenses, or zoom. Telephoto, zoom, it gets its name because they telescope outwards. Some high-end lenses don't, majority do, but this gives you the ability to zoom in and out so you can get closer or further away from a target. A wider or tighter view on whatever it is you're shooting. You can't see it written on these lenses, but these are two very high-end lenses for their categories, for Canon and for Sony. The aperture hits at 2.8 for this. For a telephoto lens, that is the lowest aperture you can get is 2.8. Those lenses are typically expensive, but they're very, very good quality. For example, that Sony on the right-hand side there probably retails for about $2,200 to $2,500. And that Canon on the left there, when it did retail, is probably about $1,700 or $1,600. Now you might be asking yourself, why a prime lens? Why a zoom lens? Should I just keep the kit? And here's what I'll say. Kit lens gives you fantastic flexibility, and I highly recommend it for the beginning photographer. If you're brand new, you should get yourself a kit lens. Learn the product. Feel more comfortable with it. Learn how to use it. From there, then you can start writing your own critiques down on what you need the camera to do, what you don't need it to do, what it does really well, what it doesn't do enough of. I do that with all my lenses as I go, and that's how I justify buying a new lens. Now, if you're not like that and you're impatient, prime lenses are fantastic for portraits. They're lighter weight typically. They have the best f-stop on there. However, my downside to that is you can't zoom. So like with my 28, if I don't like the angle that I'm at, I've got to back up or I've got to move closer in order to get what I want in the frame that I want. Zoom lenses give me the flexibility of doing that. They might not be an f1.4 or 1.2, the best apertures, but an f2.8 still lets in a good amount of light. Now, when you're looking at higher end lenses like that in the zoom category or the telephoto category, not only are they expensive, but they're big. And that is a big, big thing a lot of customers are worried about. The weight of a lens has a lot to do with your ability to want to go shoot. I get a lot of people who are birders or nature photography folks who want a big, bad camera setup so they can get the shots. They're not really putting into effect or a term that they're going to have to hike and carry 15, 10 pounds worth of camera gear extra with them amongst all their other things. So I always remind customers that. There's form and functionality within both of these properties and with both of these lens types. It's really just figuring out what's best for you and yourself personally. Because I can tell you what to buy, I can show you what to do, I can bring the horse to water, I can't make him drink. For those that need something kind of more like a kit lens, but it does everything, I always like to do these ones as well. The last one I'll show you before I tell you what lenses to buy, travel lenses. My best example for this is a story. It's a father who came in who was getting ready to take his son to Africa, and they were going to do this cool safari, and he wanted to not buy a new camera, but buy one lens to conquer them all. Something that he could easily get shots of and do everything with, but something that wasn't, didn't involve him buying a brand new camera. And we landed up buying a travel lens. A lens that gave him a large range on focal length. This one's 18 to 135. The one he purchased was a 28 to 400. that lens did not have a good aperture. But what it did offer him was the flexibility of having a lens that could do it all on his camera body that he was comfortable with. So it's another great option if you're going on a trip, a vacation, you want to get a lens that kind of does everything all in one, this is a good option. Now, what lenses do you need? And I put those needs into quotations because photography is a want. If I'm being honest, it is something that we love to do, we want to do, and it's something we got into probably because of another person in our life, or because of a photo that we saw, or for the first time we ever picked up a camera and shot it. However, it's very easy to think about there and say, oh, what do I need? What do I need? Without really thinking and kind of going through the motions. So this is what I tell people. This is the traditional Trinity within the camera world. Trinity is the 50mm or a prime lens of some sort, 24 to 70, and 70 to 200. If you can get into this range, you're covering all your bases. The 50 is your perfect portrait. The 24 to 70 is the street walking ultimate lens. Wide angle to portrait, it does it all. And for those distance shots, for the birds, for the crazy architecture or nature that might be at the distance that you can't get to, 70 to 200 cleans up the rest of that for us. This kind of trinity of lenses, this setup that we have, is a really nice way of accomplishing everything. You need not want more if you had these three. So if you came into me and you said that you had infinite amount of money, you wanted to buy one camera setup that'll rule everything, that'll keep you set for years, this is what I would tell you to look at. The prime lens does not have to be a 50. 50 is usually the one that people like the most because it is the closest to the human eye. I love my 28mm prime. I have a 35 prime at home too that I use from time to time. It just kind of comes down to flexibility and what you need. I personally like my 28 because it's so small. Last couple cleaning notes. Use your timer and camera app. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of using the app to transfer photos, but if you've got a couple friends and family members that want to see some stuff, you want to send them something quick, it's an easy way to do that. Also, too, using the timer, you don't have to sit and fidget with the camera and set it on a 10-second burst. You can easily just walk away from the camera and trigger it from your phone. Now, we're going to talk more about content creation as we go through, but something that's becoming more and more popular, people have businesses, people have ways to make money, they're looking to create content. They don't want to hire someone to do it because that costs even more money, so they're coming in, they're buying equipment. If you're coming into this, you're brand new, my recommendation, the 4 most important aspects to creating video, photo, or anything is video quality, photo quality, stabilization, lighting, and microphones. Analyze those 4 things that you have, see where you're at with that equipment, and then make adjustments from there. Ask questions, get the help that's necessary for that. If you're someone who wants to get into it, and you don't really know how, a lot of these brands have a kit that you can purchase. Nikon, Canon, Sony usually have various creator or accessory kits that give you everything in one. The memory card, stabilization, maybe a lighting unit of some sort, but just enough to get yourself off the ground and running. Now, this is where I usually lose people, but if I could tell you to buy 5 things today, it's the top 5 of my list here. Get yourself a bag. Protect the equipment that you purchased. You spent a lot of money on it. No reason to bang that around and get it all muddied up. An extra battery and an extra memory card. Again, if you forget to charge your camera, it dies on you, it's going to take 30-40 minutes to get a few bars on it. So just have an extra battery in the bag ready to go, next to an extra memory card in case it breaks or busts. Get yourself a lens cleaning kit. If you wear glasses, use your glass microfiber cloth. Do not use your sweaters, your t-shirts, or your any other clothing to clean your lens. You're going to scratch the lens, and again, might not be the first time, might not be the 100th time, but 10,000 times down the road of you taking your sweater and rubbing your lens, you're going to create scratches on it. Those scratches are going to affect the autofocus and the clarity of your lens, so take care of it. And then do a camera strap. Again, you might not like wearing them, but it's a good way of making sure you don't lose your camera. If you set it down, you put it down somewhere, you at least then have the strap. It's around your neck. I personally am a huge camera strap guy. I even have mine where I can detach it with a quick release. So that way I can get it on and off at any point in time. If I don't want to use it, I can put it away. But I'm a huge camera strap guy. Tripods if you need extra stability. External hard drives like we talked about earlier are always great. Filters, I don't talk a lot about them during the class, but they are something I'd recommend. Additional lenses like we just talked about, and keep classes and workshops going. When it comes to photography, anybody out there interested should forever be a student. There's always something new to learn, new technologies developing. I mean, this week alone, they just announced the new Sony, the 7.5. So that's huge. Just new technology, new products coming out all the time. I love this quote. I love sharing it at the end of the first class because I think this is the one that people are the most receptive to it. But the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. It's one of my favorite Benjamin Franklin quotes. And the reason I like this quote so much is that I think people, especially in photography, we get caught up on price. This stuff can get expensive. When you realize what you need to get what it is that you want out of photography, it usually comes at a penny. So please remember, if there is a piece of equipment that you want, you're excited for, don't second guess yourself. Don't allow yourself to be deceived by a cheaper price of a product that's similar but not equivalent to what you want. Take the time, save up, and get the piece of equipment that's going to get your job done, because that poor quality that you see in that product that you bought for photography will always be there and it'll never leave you. So buy the things that you want, buy the things that best suit your photography and your skill. And that's all I got for you guys. So next Thursday is our intermediate class. That is going to take place at 5:30 next week, same time. That is December 11th. Just as a reminder, everybody, December 11th is next Thursday. That is our intro class. December 18th is our advanced camera class. And then we're going to do on December 22nd, instead of the 25th, the Beyond the Traditional Camera class, because the 25th will be Christmas Day. That's all I got for you guys. So I'll keep this going for a little bit longer. If anybody has any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to chat. I'll answer those live for us while we're here. anybody has any questions on the online or in person. So I will end the class there, just not to keep this running for too long. Guys, thank you for coming out every week. I really appreciate it. I teach this because you guys are here to listen and learn. My name is Saxon. Again, I do this every Thursday from 5:30 to 7. I will see everybody on December 11th, the next Thursday, for the intermediate class. Until then, keep enjoying yourselves, keep taking pictures, and I'm